Island is an animated sequel to the film Kong Skull Island, focusing on a group of people striving to escape the eponymous island. As they navigate through their intense, perilous journey, they encounter a myriad of menacing creatures eager to make them their next meal. Their quest to survive leads them into the heart of Skull Island, uncovering its monstrous inhabitants, and you are along for the journey. Now, at first glance, Skull Island on Netflix may not look to be of much interest, but for those who revel in animated series and monster clashes, it's actually quite thrilling. If you like to see realistic deaths from monsters, although the show doesn't really overdo it to the point where it's distasteful, it does still manage to make you feel as though there's stakes. One potential drawback I'll say, however, could be the character's somewhat exaggerated quirkiness. They always seem to have an air of humor even in the dire circumstances, like when they're being chased by monsters, and it could detract from the sense of danger, which might put off some people, but once you get over that hump, it's pretty enjoyable, and there's some serious beats too, although they're very brief and seemingly rushed, but only at times. But anyway, let's get into the summary of Season 1. For this portion of the video, there won't be any spoilers, or at least not anything outside of what you've probably seen in the trailers. So this is the basic story. Our protagonists embark on a nautical journey, encounter fellow key characters from another boat, and as a result of a monster attack, they get marooned on an enigmatic island. This island is none other than Skull Island, a secluded, mysterious island teeming with peculiar creatures that seem to be amalgamations of familiar fauna and flora. The main antagonist is a sea creature of unknown origin that follows them to this island. The challenge escalates as they have to devise a means to get home. The presence of the sea creature, however, presents a formidable obstacle because it also possesses the power and the propensity to sink any vessel that they could manage to build, and so that's basically it. The cast of characters is indeed intriguing. As I noted in my initial episode 1 review, there are echoes of Camp Cretaceous, yet there are facets of the series that I appreciate more. One of those elements being that we actually get to see a better implementation of death. The characters themselves are very wacky, and they feel as though they're not from like the real world. When they should be very scared, they're often cracking jokes, which I guess can grate on people's nerves after a while, but they still end up managing to be likable. There's even one character who initially irritates you a lot, but eventually wins you over as the show progresses. Also, there doesn't seem to be any serious relationship between the characters. I believe Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous did better in that regard. The characters in Skull Island feel as though they're in a sitcom putting on a show for a laugh track. Perhaps this is due to the story being delivered at such a rapid speed. Each episode lasts around 20 minutes. As a result, there isn't much time for any breathing room or for the quiet to linger long enough to feel like a realistic conversation.
You were right. We gotta get a signal going. What?
I just love when you say you were wrong and that I was right.
Well, I never said I was wrong.
Really?
See what I'm talking about? And for some context, without spoiling too much, the guy on the left just went through a harrowing, traumatic event. Like, literally just went through it. To the point where he should be destroyed. Or at least in a very mentally chaotic condition. But here he is cracking jokes. Anywho, when discussing their history or their feelings for one another, it still effectively conveys the idea as everyone is, battling for their life, but romance is the last thing on their minds. Thus, I do enjoy that there isn't any in the first season at least. There's a moment where it's acknowledged, actually several moments, but it's very fleeting, and when they're in the midst of running away from something or being worried about something, you quickly forget about it, which is actually more believable. As for the dialogue, given the series' quirky and fast-paced nature with an emphasis on action and island mystery, don't anticipate any profound dialogue or any depth to it. The conversations aren't deeply thought-provoking or insightful as you might expect from real-world interactions. Characters will discuss realistic matters and plan out their actions, interactions between family members, kind of mimic real-life familial exchanges. However, these dialogues tend to stay on the surface level. It's not meant to be very deep. It's meant to just barely be there to push the story along, so if you're going in and watching this for some meaningful interaction between people, this is probably not the show for you. The story, however, is good, but like I said, it's very surface level. The main focus is on the action and people trying to survive. In that way, it feels a lot like Skull Island and the 2005 King Kong movie. Everyone is trying to survive, and in so doing, a lot of it does seem very comical. I did laugh quite a bit at just some of the reactions of some of the people, and honestly, their reactions is what made it enjoyable and funny in such a way that you almost believe that it's an action comedy.
Oh my god!
You're her.
What is that? hell?
The action scenes truly stand out in the series, particularly the very exhilarating chase sequences that involve these gigantic monsters just chasing these people. I mean, honestly, the cinematography is so immersive that it actually makes you feel like you're in the middle of the action. It makes you feel as though you're part of this thrilling theme park ride. I actually found myself freaking cringing or wincing as the characters narrowly escape the clutches of these monsters chasing them. That's an example of what I mean. It's done so expertly, and there's one memorable scene that features a creature moving at such a high speed that one of the characters is actually struggling to keep track of it with her eyes, enhancing the sense of imminent danger. The cinematography of the monster action sequences is actually quite impressive. Like, while there's a major kaiju scene that is executed well, the series really excels, in my opinion, when it comes to the smaller, more intimate encounters between the characters and the smaller creatures on the island. As for the character development is present, but it's limited mostly to one or possibly two characters if you include one of the monsters. That can be seen as a bit disappointing. While it's only the first season, one would expect more development for characters that are introduced, or at least the initial character that was introduced as the main character. However, he seems to function more as comedic relief and a supporting character. It seems that another character we follow, who has a more fleshed out backstory and intriguing situation, might actually be the central protagonist. So, to give you a quick recap of Season 1 of Skull Island. As the animated series Skull Island commences, audiences meet Annie, a fugitive girl who miraculously evades a ship full of mercenaries and escaping via a speedboat. She is subsequently discovered adrift next to the expedition ship called Once Upon a Maritime. The main crew of the ship includes the captain, known mysteriously as Cap, Charlie, his son, Hiro, Cap's friend and an adventurer, and Mike, Hiro's son. Cap and Hiro are actually good friends, which is why their sons are good friends. They both love nature and the mysterious, and they actually partner together to explore the South Pacific Ocean. But apparently they were bombing the scenes and scanning for unusual life forms, which doesn't bode well, and is probably conflicting given that they have such a respect for nature. Anyway, they bring Annie aboard. She's obviously feral, she's aggressive and distrustful of humans, and she reveals that she hails from a nearby island and is searching for her pet dog. Her ship gets invaded by some mercenaries resembling ninjas, yet before anyone can make a move, a gigantic squid-like kraken creature attacks the ship, killing almost everyone. And unfortunately, Mike's father is also a victim. So yeah, he dies, because of course he does. Poor Mike is knocked off the boat by the creature, and Charlie jumps overboard to go rescue his friend. Cap is still alive, and struggles with escaping a fishing net because he's dumb and doesn't remember that he needs to swim up for freaking air. And while he's almost drowning, he ends up being saved by Annie, and she then swims away, leaving him there to drown. Charlie and Mike find themselves on what appears to be a deserted island, only to be attacked later by gigantic creatures. Luckily, Annie arrives in time to rescue them, and later introduces them to her companion, a massive creature that looks like a cross between a bear, a dog, and a wolf, which they find out is fiercely loyal to her. They share a bond as a result of their fathers killing each other. His name is Dog, and honestly, I love him.
He wants you to go to bed now.
Okay, good night.
They soon realize that a colossal ape named Kong, who asserts dominance over all the creatures on the island, inhabits this place known as Skull Island. However, there is one creature who Kong does not control, the sea monster, who seems to challenge him. Annie clarifies that Skull Island is not her home, and she comes from another island nearby. Mike discloses that he and his father intentionally set a course for Skull Island under a private contractor's payment, and that they had kept this hidden from Cap and Charlie. We also notably see him getting worse as he conceals his worsening injury, because of course he does. What would a mysterious island show about monsters be without one person hiding the fact that they've been poisoned and are slowly changing or dying? Cap, who also ends up on Skull Island, encounters another shipwrecked survivor survivor, Irene, a botanist. It's revealed or deduced, if you're keen like me, that she's Annie's mother, explaining why she's pursuing Annie so much. In fact, Irene's men were the ones who attacked Cap's ship with their little ninjas while they were searching for Annie. Cap is very likable. He's also upfront with Irene, stating his aim to find his son Charlie. Their rescue attempt by helicopter is quickly thwarted by the giant squid monster kraken thing, whose surprisingly long tentacles can apparently reach to freaking Kingdom Come. And so yeah, they're not going anywhere. There's also a massive hawk-like creature that snatches people away, presumably to a nest somewhere. Irene plans to capture Annie using the hawk to take the dog out of the equation, since the dog can easily kill her soldiers. Meanwhile, upon spotting Irene and her mercenaries, Mike instructs Charlie to stay hidden in this little red cornfield forest thing, planning to have him rescue Mike and Charlie's father later. Annie had also ended up being caught because she harbors resentment against those who captured her and her dog. The hawk then flew off with dog. Unfortunately, I was honestly crying when I saw this part. When she regained consciousness, she lets her mother have it, and her mother, who we know as Irene, apologizes to her and reveals to her that she's her mom and she spent the last decade trying to look for her. By the way, poor Charlie is captured by the hawk and taken away after he's chased out the cornfield by some weird native person. He's taken to this island's peak, a temple dedicated to Kong, the giant ape. The island natives, like the one that chased him out to get captured by the hawk, view Kong as their protector. Charlie around this time had seen Dog, who is alive, and they have an understanding to get back to Annie to work together. Charlie rides Dog back down the side of the temple, and they somehow make it back to the lower parts of the island. This is where Charlie notices that Kong is infatuated with a necklace from an old friend, which was revealed to be some girl who was killed by the squid monster who was best friends with Kong. During this time, Mike gets sicker. We get a backstory of Annie and how she met Dog, having seen her father for the last time as he went out there to protect her from Dog's father. Annie is so happy to see Dog again. She makes her mother apologize for shooting him, or for making her men shoot at him, and makes her apologize for not finding her sooner, which is honestly a very heartfelt moment. There's also something going on between these two. Because poor Mike is getting sicker, Charlie hatches a plan based on the murals he saw at the temple to draw Kong to the water so he can fight the squid monster, because he's battled monsters before. Annie and Dog are responsible for drawing Kong away, and they do this by stealing his precious necklace that belonged to his friend who died. This is the face of someone who needed not be screwed with. And when you consider how actually close he was with this girl, the relationship that they had, you understand fully well why he would go apeshit, literally, at someone taking the only thing that he has left of her. Dog gets hurt while he is being chased, and so Charlie jumps off so Dog can have less weight. With Dog and Annie at the shore, the huge squid monster emerges to battle Kong, because that's what it's been waiting for this entire time. This thing is freaking massive. Kong is struggling, but he manages to hold his own, and even later rescues Dog from drowning, as Annie's face reminds him of his best friend that passed away. After putting them to safety, and Annie trying to apologize to him, once again, he has to fight the freaking squid. This thing will just not give him a break. But of course, he's Kong, and he ultimately defeats it. Elsewhere in the jungle, Cap, who ran to find his son Charlie, when he realized Annie and Dog came back without him, faces a gigantic centipede, and he is saved by an ailing Mike, who then collapses from the worsening infection. As the squid comes back again, Kong rips it apart and tosses its colossal body in the air. The tidal wave goes careening towards Kong, and unfortunately, both Annie and Dog. Annie is knocked out as a result of the turbulent water, and when she wakes up, she's in a hospital, shocked to learn that she's been taken there by her mother Irene. In complete disbelief and horror, Annie looks through the window and sees that she's in a city halfway across the world from Skull Island. She is totally lost. We have no idea what happened to Cap, Charlie, and the rest of those on the island. Honestly, I was hooked by this point, and I was very angry at the cliffhanger. I can honestly say that I'm completely invested in the freaking story. And I want to know what happened to Dog. Even though the characters don't seem to have a tremendous amount of depth, you do care about what happens to them. I worry about Charlie's father, Cap. I worry about Mike. Mike is my favorite character, and it's not just because he's Asian. It's because he also reminds me of Kenji from Camp Cretaceous, who is my favorite character on there. And it's not just because he's Asian either. The personalities are very big brother type and loyal, and so you feel like it would be a great loss if anything happened to them. It's also tragic since Mike lost his father, but despite his illness, he's prepared to risk his life to save his buddies. The end of the show, holy moly, I could feel Annie's anguish towards the end of the series when she looks out the window and realizes that she's no longer at home. I bet Kong felt something similar in those films where he was ripped away from his home and dumped in the mainland. It's a very impressive and disorienting transition for me as the viewer to start start the series in the island setting where you can more or less predict what's coming, only to end up in a world of concrete and chemical-laden air. Annie, for the longest while since she was a kid, was completely fearless because she knew how to navigate the dangers of the island. However, seeing the look of horror on her face shows us that she's completely out of her element. The show was amazing. I would much rather have the story in animation format, to be honest, if we get more of it, but even still with the issues that are very minuscule in my opinion, it really has helped to scratch that monster kaiju itch. I enjoyed how they personified Kong, how they made the monsters feel as though they have their own personality. I love all the different monsters that we got to see. It's honestly so fascinating. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.